A tweeter writes in, does anyone else have zero interest in this sub story? Like, this is just another example of people having more money than sense.
He's that guy.
All right, congratulations. You're the one who's not interested in the sub story. You stay strong over there. But the hours are dwindling of breathable air. Chris Cody just said to me during the break, because he's marveling at this part of it the way that I think we all are with morbid curiosity. What a terrible way to die, to know that you are down there running out of air. I think we talk about the Titanic. We could talk about the interview yesterday we did with a former Navy submarine captain and how dangerous these things actually are. But this man here is an explorer, Chris Brown. He has been to the ends of the earth. He was going to go down on this thing because he understands the excitement and the titillation of going where people don't go. However, he refused after putting down the $10,000 deposit to be in that submersible. He backed out, and he's here to tell us why. So before we get started, Chris, and thank you for being on with us, what would you say to us is the most dangerous exploring thing you've actually been willing to do at the edges of these adrenaline rushes and the historic looking around the world in terms of discovery and wonder and pushing human extremes?
The most dangerous. Can I pick two?
Sure.
They fall into totally different categories. Probably the most dangerous overall was I was the first person ever to the pole of inaccessibility in Africa. Just to recap for your listeners, a pole of inaccessibility is the point that's furthest from the ocean in any direction. For Africa, that pole lies in Southeast Central African Republic, right on the border with DRC, the Congo, and South Sudan. So a pretty fighty region. There's bandits, guerrillas, ISIS, anti-government insurgents. The Wagner group is active there. There's corruption in the police and there's corruption in the army. So that was very much a human danger.
Before we get to the second one, why did you do that?
This is my own little project. If you've got the time to go into a short history, I went to the South Pole actually with Hamish. It ties in together actually with Hamish and Buzz Aldrin in 2016. When I arrived at the South Pole, I was told something that I didn't really know, that there's 5 South Poles. There's the South Pole base, which the American base there, they call that South Pole. There's a ceremonial South Pole where you've got all the flags and everybody takes their pictures. There's a geomagnetic and the geographic South Pole. But there was this 5th one called the Pole of Inaccessibility. I'd never heard of it at that point. Roll on 2 years, I'm up Everest doing the world's highest dinner party. Yes, another of these things that we do. Just for you can do it. And I came across people doing the 7 Summits project. I thought that's quite a cool thing to do. That's where you climb the highest mountain in each continent. But not really being into mountaineering, I thought, oh, what can I come up with myself? And I just put the 2 together and came up to try and be the first person to all 7 continental poles of inaccessibility.
What was the biggest danger on the route to the pole of inaccessibility? What was the place that you found with all of the things that you described where you were like, okay, now I've gone too far. I've gone right to the brink of stupidity?
That one, I didn't reach that point. When you plan expeditions, you're going on these things, you look at all the risks that are involved and you try and mitigate against those risks. You might want to bring along some experts to help you in a particular area. You might want to employ specialist equipment. It may even be something simple to mitigate a risk by just changing when you go. In the African instance, you try to go in the dry period when there'll be less water around, so there'll be a smaller chance of people being in that area. I was able to mitigate those by taking along some American special forces, actually. We got some help from the government because they didn't want foreigners to come to harm in their country, so we got some soldiers there. We took some steps to avoid being kidnapped by flying into one place and out of another. Even I didn't know which of the 4 possible landing zones we were going to go into. So that's an example of managing the risk. When we get onto the sub, it came to me that I could not manage those risks. So that's why I pulled out.
All right, hold on. We'll get to that in a second. But what was your second most dangerous adventure?
That was another pole, but it's a very different danger. I was trying to get to the pole of inaccessibility for Antarctica. So it's probably the most inaccessible place on the planet, given that Antarctica is the most inaccessible place, and this is the most inaccessible point of the whole of Antarctica. It's supposed to be a 7 to 10 day expedition. Ended up being stuck there for 28 days. 4 storms rolled through. 2 of them were the biggest storms that the operators and the people in Antarctica had ever seen in 17 years of operation. At one point, fresh food had run out. It was precipitating, snowing, which it shouldn't do in Antarctica because it's a desert, another indicator of climate change. And the snow was causing the heating elements to fail because they're not built to have snow coming in the exhaust. We'd been stuck without any air relief. There'd been a couple of boomerang flights come in, gone back, a couple of failed ones. This was at a time of COVID, so we're having difficulty getting anything in and out. Morale was low, and I think we were 1 accident away from just a bit of a meltdown. That was an environmental risk. That's humans versus planet Earth.
What does a bit of a meltdown look like, and what does the worst storm in Antarctica feel like?
Second one first. We had winds of the regular winds were 90 miles an hour. It was gusting up to 120, which is high. You can't go outside. Everybody had to get into like a communal tent. We all stayed in one place. You move around in pairs. Nobody goes outside without another person. But at the height of the winds, you just can't go out. You can't stand up. In preparation, we'd put up poles between the food and essential accommodation sections, every 1 meter apart because you can't see more than a meter. Got some great footage where I challenged people to tell me what's in the video, and it's blowing and blowing. And I tell you, it's something quite big, and it's one of the Arctic trucks, and you can't see it. It's only 5 meters away from the camera. A meltdown. Everybody's morale is low, and they're hungry. And if something goes wrong, it's easy for people to start getting a bit ratty with one another in that kind of environment. You shouldn't. You try your best, you can't. But yeah, energy levels, sometimes, there's going to be disagreements. If we'd had an accident, if somebody's had a bad accident, we can't get them out. No flights, no planes can come in or go out at all. So it's quite a dangerous position.
And as we establish your bona fides here, because the people listening to this, you seek these things. You want to challenge yourself. Dinner on Mount Everest compared to these things is easy. Dinner with
yes.
A dinner party. Yes, is the answer. Dinner party on Mount Everest with your friends, easy compared to these other 2 things that you're talking about. And the third that we're having you on for that you deem too risky.
Yes.
Okay.
What did you guys eat on Mount Everest? What was for dinner?
All right. So it was an attempt to also set a record for the world's highest dinner party. So it had to be Michelin starred food. It was a lamb tagine with I believe it was like a souffle for pudding. And we all dressed up in DJs, and the ladies wore ball gowns.
I don't feel bad for these people. This is throwing away money, all of these people, to show off. And you realize there's a backlash against the rich for being this flippant about life, correct? When one of the things that's happening at literally at the bottom of the sea right now is a whole bunch of people saying you deserve it for taking that risk. What are you doing? Why are you being so flippant about life?
I think everybody seeks enjoyment and adventure in life. I think as humans, we're born to explore. We always have. Otherwise, we'd have stayed in the one little Ethiopian continent where we developed. Going out there, finding the world, experiencing new cultures, advancing science. That's what it's all about.
You deemed this one, though, this expedition was advancing science, because going to see a famous shipwreck, it is exploration of the sea, which has been less explored than space, but you're exploring something that other tourists have already explored for $250,000. It's as far as human achievement goes, it's a bought and paid for tourist attraction, is it not?
No, the original purpose of the dives was to go down and make a 3D rendering of the wreck, which would then be repeated after a few years so that you could analyze what parts of the wreck are decaying, so that we could then take steps to preserve the Titanic wreck.
All right, we're going to keep you right there for a second, Chris, because I want you to take me through the specifics of how you come to put down the $10,000 and then how you pull it back, why it is you decided, never mind if you got a refund, and what it is that you're thinking about the present predicament. Because, forgive me, you said his name earlier. You were friends with one of the people who was down there, correct?
That's correct, Hamish Harding.
And the backstory there that the audience needs to know, because this is a real horror for you watching this, I'm sure. The backstory of your connection there is how deep?
We're both, the exploration arena is relatively small. The extreme exploration arena is even smaller. So you tend to come across the same people again and again. I shared an expedition to the regular South Pole, aforementioned, with Hamish in 2016. We went there with Buzz Aldrin, your astronaut. And as a sign of the sort of person that Hamish is, he's an extremely pleasant guy, easy to get along with, very calm and collected, and a proper team player. He'll have been a real asset, is a real asset to the people in the submarine, submersible, sorry. When we were at the South Pole, Buzz Aldrin developed some problems with his health. We were allowed into the base, which most people aren't unless you're in real difficulties. You go to the South Pole to be able to take your pictures at the ceremonial pole, maybe go to the geomagnetic poles, take your photos out there. Hamish forewent all of that to look after Buzz in his hour of need. So he didn't actually get to the pole because he was looking after Buzz. That's a sign of the guy.
Chris Brown is with us. As I said, he has gone to the ends of the earth, and he just gave you his bona fides. Basically, it's a very small community of extreme explorers going to the edges of human discovery in the pursuit of wonder, awe, and invention, really. So thank you for being...
And science.
And science. Thank you for being on with us. And I should point out, it's just the coldest among us on social media, heartless among us on social media, who are thinking about this story and saying you shouldn't be so flippant with your life, not understanding the need for adventure that would risk life in this way. So, Chris, thank you again for making the time for us. Tell me, though, why it is that you decided to not go down, and did you advise your friend not to go down?
Okay, so when you put a deposit on a high-ticket item, it's normal that you pay an initial deposit, and then there'll be a couple of milestones along the way where you pay a bit more. OceanGate continuously missed those milestones, which were related to depths that they got to with the new submersible, because it was an experimental craft. That's one flag. Secondly, I saw what they were using on the vessel when it was being tested in the Bahamas, using construction pipes as ballast. That's the kind of thing, that if you and I was, how do we get across this river? You go get the wood, I'll get the string, and we try and get across the river. Using construction pipe as ballast on such a thing to dive down to 3,800 meters, that's another flag for me. They had an electrical strike on one of the testings. All of the electric equipment blew out. That's going to happen. Mother Earth decided it was going to strike it with lightning. But my question was, where's the redundancy? It completely stopped the testing. There should have been redundancy in there, and there should have been backup on the mothership that could replace those things. There's another flag. And then the final thing, the nail in the coffin for me, was it became evident that they weren't going to seek any form of certification for this craft, not to certify that it could get down to 3,800 meters, but more importantly, get down to 3,800 meters repeatedly. It's not steel, it's not iron, the traditional materials for going down to that depth. It's carbon fiber. And that was the final nail in the coffin. That's why I thought, these are the risks. I can't control any of those risks, and they're starting to pile up. You throw in the fact that they're using an Xbox controller to steer it. Now, maybe that is the best method of steering the craft, but why don't you take that a bit further, develop the controller and make it something just a little bit better? The thrusters on the outside, they're quite small, but the cables to the thrusters are on the outside of the vessel. Now, we're going down to a wreck, a large wreck, lots of debris around. If I was designing craft, I wouldn't want cables on the outside of my vessel that could possibly snag on the ship. And then also, you'll have seen that there's no turret on this submersible. That means that you're sealed in. You have to be let out from outside. It's sealed. So even if the sub was bobbing around on the surface, which would have been the best scenario that we could envisage for this, just bobbing around on the surface, just can't communicate with the ship, they would still be running out of oxygen because you can't get to it to let them out. So can you see how it's just the accumulation of red flags that caused me to pull out of this?
And what did Hamish think about you pulling out?
Okay, that conversation didn't take place. It took place with another couple of future astronauts. There's another thing, we've thrown our lot in to go up into space with Virgin Galactic. One of those other guys, his industry was shipping. He pulled out with the same concerns as me. Another guy stayed in for a year. They all went out to Newfoundland the following year, which would be 2019, expecting to do their dive in June, July, the small weather window when you could go down in this craft. And they all got to Newfoundland to be told that it was off because the company hadn't secured the uses of a support vessel. There's another flag, isn't it? Because those things should be booked years in advance. You should have options. You don't get all of your customers, if you like, mission specialists, or whatever you want to call them, out to Newfoundland and just tell them that you're not going that year.
Do you have any theories about what has happened? Do you have any expertise that you can offer us thinking about how that could have been you if you had ignored some of those red flags?
It has crossed my mind. It could quite easily be the three of us who pulled out, just sitting there in the cold. It's going to be about 0 degrees if it's sitting on the bottom. The oxygen's running out. You'll have presumably run out of power before then because you'd have used it to try and get off. If you snagged on something, if you'd just been sunk to the bottom, you'd have been using the power to try and get to the surface. So the chances are they've been out of power for a while. There'll be no heating. The oxygen's running out, but there's also, to my knowledge, no scrubbers in the vessel. So the carbon dioxide will be building up and people will be falling asleep. And it's also very cramped conditions for 5 people in that vessel. Just look at the size of it there. You're sitting on the floor, cramped conditions, oxygen running out, high carbon dioxide, dark and freezing. It's a bleak thought.
Would you have hope in there somewhere that there could be a rescue, or would you have such expertise that you would want to end your life early because there's no rescue here that seems easy or possible? Or how do you hold on to hope?
I've been asked this several times, even in difficult situations. As the explorer and Hamish, three of the people in that vessel, I'm not so sure about the Daywoods, are experienced explorers. As an experienced explorer, you probably know yourself, if you're in a situation, you're looking for ways out. If the storm's there, you think, oh, well, storm will be finished in a couple of days. You're running out of food. Okay, well, when the storm's finished, some food could come in. We can survive on dried rations anyway. Heating's running out. Well, let's get out there in the storm. We'll risk ourselves going out there to clear the exhaust. You're coming up with ways of looking after yourself. Unfortunately for these guys, it'll be extremely limited what they can do. I'm not even sure that ending your life early would be an option. You wouldn't have the facilities for doing it down there. I don't want to get into speculation whilst they're possibly still alive. It's not fair on the friends and family to be going down that route. We've still got to hope that there's a miracle. Do you remember the footballers in the Thai cave? Everybody had pretty much given up on them, and they were saved at the last minute. Let's just hope something can come through. Maybe the French ROVs can find it and they can get it to the surface really quickly. Maybe the guys in the sub have found a way to lower their oxygen or started using less oxygen right from the very beginning. If they had sleeping tablets or just force themselves to sleep or just breathe slowly, there's always hope.
We should have hope, and I forgive me if it seems indelicate or cold to sort of prod around in the macabre details here, because I do think a lot of people are thinking about these things but don't have the expertise to know what the answers are. I imagine also the breathing air would cause nausea, right? I'm looking for the places where there might be some relief. Sleeping tablets would be one of them.
Yeah, the relief would be natural. The buildup of carbon dioxide will cause you to sleep. You're also very cold. That's a negative one as well, because it will cause you to shiver, which uses more oxygen. But if the carbon dioxide builds up and you're very cold, I'm not a medic, but I would think you just pretty much go to sleep.
I would assume, because we had a Navy submarine veteran on with us yesterday who explained with a real understanding what risks are involved when you choose this kind of exploration, but realizing in a small space that the choice that you have made offers you very little in the way of hope, correct? The people there aren't confused like I would be about not knowing what my fate is. The people there know better than anybody how difficult it is to extract them from this situation. So they're alone with that as well. They have more knowledge of what the risk was involved in this because they chose the risk, correct?
That's right. And that's something as explorers we often neglect when it comes to our friends and family, that it's almost worse for them because they have no concept of what it's like to be in these situations. They can't even imagine. We're kind of looking at three scenarios for this sub. The friends and family probably can't imagine what it would be like to be in those conditions. But when you're in that position, it's kind of pointless giving up hope. There's always going to be hope until the end.
Because survival is the greatest instinct, correct?
That's right, yeah.
Can you explain to me and the audience what you think happened? Or is it unfair to speculate because so many things could have happened?
Really the latter. If I had to pick the most likely, I think it's been dropped possibly directly onto the wreck. They lost comms about 1 hour 45 in, which would be roughly the amount of time it takes to get down to the wreck. I've heard transcripts from other people who've been down on these dives previously. One dive landed so far away from the wreck, it took them about 90 minutes to find it. Yet another arrived really close to the wreck and they had 3 hours going around it and scanning it. So it seemed a bit haphazard where they were going to land. There's a chance that it's landed at the wreck or on another piece of debris and snagged. That would be my personal guess. that's not based on expertise, though, I'm afraid. I think the guy yesterday was probably better at making guesses in that area.
Chris, thank you for your expertise. I do appreciate that and the time, and condolences on what must be a difficult time thinking about somebody, a kindred spirit, in a truly horrific situation. Thank you, sir.
Pleasure.